Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel and welcome to this video. Today we will be painting some echinaceas and I will be using watercolor and ink. So let's get started. First thing I will do is sketch just the centers of my echinaceas so that I know where I'm going to place them and how they are going to be facing. For the watercolors, I will be using a set from Etchr. And first colors I'm mixing are Pretty Pink and Rouge Red and a little bit of the Leaf Green just to tone that pink down a little bit. I'd like to tone them down not by using black but by using the analog color, the color that is opposite to the color I have on the color wheel. So pink and green are opposite, and if you want to tone down your pink, you can just add a tiny bit of the green. Then I just moved on to painting my first petals, and I'm using Panart brush. This is Mop round brush. All the materials I'm using are going to be listed in the description box if you want to check something out. And the paper is Artefacto. So again, mixing same colors, a little bit more of Pretty Pink, Rouge Red, and Leaf Green. Just using the tip of my brush and adding some paint. I did not wet my paper, so I've painted wet on dry, and now I'm just tapping in a little bit more saturated paint, wet on wet. So I do want to have my petals as uneven and as random as possible. So just mixing in a little bit more of the paint, a bit more saturated, darker mixture, and I'm using clean towel just to pick up the paint where I want to make it a little bit lighter because the paint is still wet, so you can do that. And adding where I want to add a little bit of the darker paint. Now I'm using some burnt sienna to paint in the central part and also some dark brown. Just to paint the part between the cone and petals. And with this small detail brush, this is just a no-name detail brush, I'm adding a little bit more of that darker brown, and then the same mixture as I used for petals, but this time quite saturated. I'm not using much water in my mixture. You can see that it's very, very creamy consistency. I'm painting in just the part next to the center where my petals are touching the center, adding a little bit more of the details to them. Tapping in to create a bit more texture. And also I'm gonna splatter a couple of splatters just to make it a little bit more looser. And when I'm finished with the first one, I'm gonna move on to the second one, again using same mixture, Pretty Pink, Rouge Red, and dark brown, or leaf green, I'm sorry, to paint in the petals on the second flower. And I'm just gonna do the same thing as I did for the first one, painting wet on dry, making my petals as random as possible, using the tip of my brush and also the belly, just pressing it a little bit harder. And I do want to make those petals on top looking a little bit smaller, like they're further away, and those at the bottom a little bit larger. So you know how echinacea has those petals facing down from the center. Well, that's what I wanted to make it look like we're almost looking at it from the top. Same mixture of colors for the center, just adding a little bit more of the details. The paint is still wet, so I'm just adding a little bit more of that darker pigment to the petals, just to give them a little bit more texture. Again, couple of splatters using Pretty Pink. I don't want to go overboard with my splatters. Now I have picked up again that leaf green mixture, dark pink mixture to create the stem and also to create the leaves. And I do want to make them also quite loose. I decided I wanted to add a little bit more of the pigment to the central part to make it even darker. I do want to have quite big contrast between the central part of my flower and between the petals and the rest of the painting. So I did want to make it quite dark. Also, I wanted to add a little bit more of the green to the leaves and stems, and then a bit more of the details to the central part, just adding a couple of lines. I dried it completely, and then when it was dry, I just noticed I do want to make my leaves even a little bit darker, so I've added same mixture and then added a little bit of the yellow to the central part. After it completely dried, I'm moving on to the inking, and my ink is not waterproof, so I'm gonna finish it off with watercolors and then move on to the inking. If you're using waterproof ink, you can add more details, but my ink is water soluble, so I have finished with my watercolors and then on top adding that ink. Also, I do want to make my inking and those lines very loose. Going outside the edges, I'm not really minding to paint in the edges of my flowers. I do want to make it, again, quite loose and sketchy. If that's what you prefer, you can also add some text, make it into a card. And I've added quite an amount of the ink also around the center of my echinacea. And with that, I'll be finishing off. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Maybe it was helpful. Maybe you learned something. And if you did like it, please hit the like button, share it, and comment. If you haven't still, please do subscribe to my channel. I have a lot of tutorials here, so I'm sure you will find something for yourself. Also, if you want a more real-time tutorials videos, check out my Patreon. I have also quite an amount of real-time videos there. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope I'll see you next time. Bye!